Tonight on The Buzz, SAG-AFTRA just went through an election that exposed deep rifts still festering in the union. Jonathan Handel, the entertainment labor reporter for The Hollywood Reporter, joins us tonight to explain what's going on and what it means to the rest of us. Avery Lu is the co-founder of Palo Alto Scientific, a company that makes wearable tech. He's concerned about improving our fitness, but I'm concerned about the security of wearing all this highly personal medical data on our wrist. We talk with him tonight about both issues. Casey Hupke is a freelance visual effects designer and an animator. He combines his love of comedy with illogical special effects to create offbeat, unique looks for IBM, AT&T, Coke, and many others. Tonight he shares his thoughts on creativity. All this, plus Randi Altman's perspective on the news, tech talk, and a Buzz flashback. The Digital Production Buzz starts now.
Tonight's Digital Production Buzz is brought to you by Otherworld Computing at MacSales.com and by ZenData at ZenData.com.
Since the dawn of digital filmmaking,
authoritative.
One show serves a worldwide network of media professionals.
Current.
uniting industry experts,
Production.
filmmakers,
Post-production.
and content creators around the planet.
Distribution.
From the media capital of the world in Los Angeles, California, the Digital Production Buzz goes live now.
And welcome to the Digital Production Buzz, the world's longest-running podcast for creative content producers covering media production, post-production, and marketing around the world. Mike Horton has the night off. Last week on The Buzz, Doug Shear, the CEO of DIS Consulting, said something that's been echoing in my head ever since. During the interview, Mike asked, why are cameras that used to cost $100,000 now less than $10,000? And Doug responded by saying he didn't think the media industry has recovered from the recession of 2008. So many companies are on the financial edge that he expects to see a number of acquisitions in the not-too-distant future. This started me thinking, every one of us loves to get something for free, or if we can't get it for free, we want to save a ton of money when we do buy it. After the financial meltdown in 2008, no one was spending any money, so companies lowered prices just to get something to sell. As every business owner knows, payrolls don't stop even if sales slow down. Prices started falling, and at the same time, many companies ramped up R&D to create new, cooler products, which they released as soon as possible, and in some cases, these new products went to market before they were ready. But in other cases, these new products replaced older products, but at new, lower price points. Pricing pressure accelerated as new companies came to market with lower costs than existing companies. New products were released at increasingly faster rates. New technology replaced old technology, except that now changes were coming so quickly and prices were dropping so rapidly that a new sensibility arose in customers, meaning the longer you wait to buy, the better and cheaper the product that you want will become. This new paradigm tends to paralyze the market. I read this every day in my email from readers and hear it in my conversations with vendors. Why buy now when, if I wait, it'll be faster and cheaper? This puts us in an untenable situation. Vendors need us to buy today to fund the development of tomorrow, but customers are reluctant to buy today because they know something better will be released tomorrow. And an industry finds itself in a precarious position of needing sales that aren't forthcoming. We have serious expectations disconnecting between buyers and sellers, one that is only going to get worse. The center cannot hold, and at some point soon, things are going to break. As Oliver Hardy said, it's another nice mess we've gotten ourselves into. This is Randi Altman's Perspective. Randi Altman has covered the post-production industry for more than 20 years. She currently runs her own website at postperspective.com. Hello, Randi. It's good to have you back.
Hi, Larry. How are you?
I'm talking to you. This is the highlight of my week. It's good to see you again. We missed you last week.
Yeah, it's been a quiet summer.
Well, IBC is coming up. What big announcement should we expect?
Well, your guess is as good as mine. At this point, everybody is very close-lipped about it. I mean, everybody's announcing that they're going to be there with great stuff. but nobody's actually being specific about what they're going to bring to the show. I expect, 4K. I expect cloud-based workflows, collaboration, and all that, but no specifics yet. Sorry.
You mean they're not telling you their secrets ahead of time?
If they are, I've been contracted. I will be sued on many levels. I have to zip it and lock it. Yes, no.
Where are ethics when we want to know the inside scoop? That's my question. You know, I was just looking over your website again because I always enjoy reading all the interviews that you've got there, and you've spent your professional career interviewing people. How do you find and select your subjects?
It depends. I never liked following an actual framework, even though in publishing you need to do that. I like to see what's new, what's interesting. I am a fan of film. I'm a fan of TV, of any sort of entertainment. So if I find that I like it, I'm assuming maybe other people do as well. So a lot of times it's just from personal taste. So, and a lot of times that's worked pretty well for me. So, and plus interesting people that seem fun.
Thinking of fun and interesting people, there's got to be a couple of interviews that stick in your head. What's one of the memorable ones?
One of the most anxiety-inducing interviews I did was with Jerry Bruckheimer, right around the Pirates of the Caribbean time early on. And his assistant said, he will call you one day. And I just sort of had to wait. He's a busy guy, I understand. But when he did call, it was about 7 o'clock my time, and my young son was with me. There was nothing that I could do. So I handed him a toy and hoped for the best. But the toy was Sing and Snore Ernie, and every 3 seconds he would hit the belly and you would hear Ernie snoring. Jerry Bruckheimer.
Does Bruckheimer remember or even talk to you about this?
Well, he hasn't spoken to me since, so I'm assuming it didn't go well on his end.
How about another one? Any other interviews come to mind?
Oh, there's been a lot. Stephen Colbert was a ton of fun to interview. Very serious about what he does, but fun. Danny DeVito I spoke to about, he did some After Effects work on his own film, Death to Smoochie, which was not critically acclaimed, but it was a ton of fun to speak to him about it. He is a gearhead. I'm assuming he still is. This was a while ago, but he really got into the technology behind it, which was fun.
Well, thinking of technology, next week is the last week of the run-up to IBC, so we'll talk to you about how you get ready for IBC next week. In the meantime, Randi, what's your website for people that want to keep track of what you're up to?
Postperspective.com.
Thanks, Randi. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Larry. Take care.
To read more from Randi Altman, visit postperspective.com. Still to come on The Buzz, Jonathan Handel, Avery Lu, Casey Hupke, Tech Talk, and Buzz Flashback. When you're working with media, one thing is essential. Your computer needs peak performance. However, when it comes to upgrading your Mac, there are so many different options to choose from that the process can be confusing. That's why Otherworld Computing carries the best upgrades that lets your computer performance and storage grow as your needs grow. Since 1988, OWC has become one of the most trusted names in quality hardware and comprehensive support to the worldwide computer industry. With an extensive online catalog of Mac, iPhone, and iPad enhancement products, as well as a dedicated team of knowledgeable experts providing first-rate tech support, OWC has everything you need to take your current system to the next level. Whether you need to maximize your system's memory, add blazing speed, or enhance reliability, look no further than the friendly experts at OWC. Learn more by visiting macsales.com today. That's macsales.com.
Jonathan Handel is an entertainment and technology attorney of counsel at Troy Gould in Los Angeles. He's also the contributing editor on entertainment labor issues for The Hollywood Reporter with his own blog at jhandel.com. Hello, Jonathan. Welcome back.
Larry, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Jonathan, there's so much I want to talk about. I'm going to stop talking about your portion, get right to the important issues. Hollywood unions have been making news these last couple of weeks, and especially SAG-AFTRA. What were the results of the recent election?
Well, there has been a lot of news, and I'm wearing my residuals tie in honor of the unions. The elections at SAG-AFTRA were very contentious. The group called Membership First, the challengers, who were in control of the union from 2005 to 2008, have come sort of roaring back. They didn't win the presidency. The president is still Ken Howard of Unite for Strength, the group that's run the union now for the past 6 years, and Ken has been president for the past 6 years. But they did win the secretary-treasurer position and the head of the LA local, which of course is the largest local in the union. So, and of course, then they won a number of board seats and so on and so forth. There's a lot of boards and delegates and things like that in the SAG-AFTRA structure. But the takeaway is that the next several years are going to be very contentious. They have their commercials. First, they have their convention coming up in a month, and they elect certain officers there. Then they have their commercials contract negotiations early next year. And then late next year, and they'll begin the process of negotiating their 2017 contract. Next year is 16, obviously, believe it or not, we're almost there. So the entire process of negotiating these two big-ticket contracts, the two contracts that account for most of the income of SAG-AFTRA members, is going to be very much inflected by political contention.
Now, Jonathan, if I remember correctly, we've got the two different parties, and Membership First was in power in the early, like 2005 to 2008. And there was just constant internecine warfare to the point that they lost a contract, if I remember correctly. Are we looking to have this kind of inter-party warfare going on again?
Well, it hopefully won't be as bad as it was because, of course, at that period, SAG and AFTRA had not merged. And so there was this big target for Membership First to say, look, AFTRA is undercutting us on deals. They're doing this, they're doing that. And there was sort of the specter of the other union there to contend with. But it is clear that we're going to be, hopefully not at that level of contention, but we are going to be seeing a more contentious period in contract negotiations. And that may affect how the studio relationship and commercials relationships play out.
One of the interesting comments that was made by the Membership First people, the insurgents, as it were, in this election, was that AFTRA and SAG was losing money in royalties because of the way the contracts were negotiated. But your research turned up something different, did it not?
Well, that's correct, at least to the extent that we have figures. We don't have figures for SAG-AFTRA, but we have figures for the Writers Guild. And there is a great degree of pattern in the way these unions bargain. It's why I'm able, I brought a prop today, which is the residuals book that I've been working on. And the cover of the residuals book is the residuals chart. The reason I'm able to summarize the residual system in a chart is that there are great patterns, a great deal of patterning between the unions. It's called pattern bargaining. So when you get stats from the Writers List, who does publish detailed statistics, you can make some inferences about SAG-AFTRA. And for the first time last year, the Writers Guild new media residuals exceeded their network primetime residuals.
I find that to be fascinating. New media exceeded primetime.
That's right. That's right. So in practical terms, you're talking about Hulu. You're also talking, though, about Netflix and Amazon Prime reruns of programming made for other platforms. So it's not quite apples to apples, but the growth rate on new media is 40% year over year, whereas the decline in network primetime is 5% declining year over year. So this year, when we see the statistics play out, you're going to see an even stronger new media year and an even weaker network primetime year.
Now, how would you describe the core disagreement between the two parties inside SAG-AFTRA? And because I remember Membership First, what's the other side called?
Unite for Strength. Unite for Strength is the incumbents, and the core disagreement really goes back to merger, and it's whether merger has brought benefits or not. So believe it or not, at some level, Membership First is still fighting the merger battle, even though the unions merged 3 years ago. One thing that does bother them, and it's taken quite some time, is that the pension and health plans still have not merged. The health plan they are working on. The pension plan, it's a very difficult, a much harder situation. But one wonders, why has it taken 3 years? Part of that is the contracts, the TV contracts and commercial contracts, didn't merge themselves until 2014. And so until those contracts were merged, it was unlikely that they were going to merge the pension or the health plans. But it still is obviously something that people are really dissatisfied with, because your earnings count for one plan or the other. And if you work under separate jurisdictions, as it were, you may not qualify for health under either. Whereas if you were combined in a single plan, you would. That's the essence of the problem that people have with this.
Both sides have high-level actors representing or being visible on both Unite for Strength and Membership First. But something that you wrote about caught my attention, which is there's tens of thousands of actors which are at sort of the bottom level of the union, which used to be the Screen Extras Guild. And it sounds like they're being used as pawns in this whole discussion. Is that a true statement, and if so, how?
Well, I don't want to wade into whether they're pawns or not, per se, but they certainly are a political factor. They're a group that is inherently going to be unhappy with the status quo, because the status quo for extras is that they're, paid like paupers and herded like cattle. And that's sort of way, honestly, that it's in great degree, it's going to continue to be, because there is a hierarchy of extras versus principal actors versus star actors. There's a pyramid in the way the economics and the way, frankly, the power works within the acting profession. So extras or background actors, as well as stunt performers, do play a significant role in the politics here. And in fact, Jane Austen, the woman who ran for Secretary Treasurer and for LA board president on the Membership First ticket, is actually not an actor. She is a stunt performer. So the head of the largest actors union in the world is not actually, per se, an actor. It's kind of surprising.
Do you think the two top executives, one from each of the different parties, are going to be able to work together? The initial statements were all very conciliatory and we're all in one family, but sometimes those can be deceptive.
I think it's going to be difficult. There is a lot of mistrust. There's a lot of politicking. The convention process, where they elect the executive vice president, who in many ways is more powerful than the secretary treasurer, really is the second most powerful elected officer. That's probably going to end up being contentious, but it probably will end up being the Unite for Strength candidate, because Membership First didn't want enough delegate candidates to really control the convention. But it's difficult politics for them.
I want to talk about the IATSE agreement, but one of the things struck me in the article that I read that you wrote, which is that broadcast and cable audiences are in decline and new media audiences are in the ascendancy. What does that mean for the long-term health of the unions?
Well, what does it mean, first of all, for the long-term health of the industry is the question, because it sort of flows downward from corporate and companies to labor. And I think that's a cloud of uncertainty that everyone's operating under. One of the points is, if you are able to successfully get off of, as a consumer, get off of a $100 a month cable package and go to a $40 a month skinny package, or never buy the $100 package in the first instance and just buy your skinny package with Netflix and Amazon Prime and maybe a bit of cable, you're talking less money that flows into the system. The less money that the hated cable companies scoop up from us, the less money they have to pay the producers, the program suppliers. And in turn, the less money flows to the unions. So it's difficult. You've got more programming on the air, more shows. Residuals have grown. Television residuals, in particular, have grown. Bottom line TV residuals have grown, I want to say like maybe 10% year over year or something. I forget the exact number. I do know that over the last 6 or 8 years, the theatrical residuals have been completely flat. Again, these are Writers Guild figures. So it's going to put pressure on the unions. There's no doubt about it. And when you have changing viewing patterns, things like over-the-top services like HBO Now that people use instead of HBO, you get a lot of technical questions. Again, this residuals chart is complex, because there are a lot of distinctions that are made between different media. And when you get a new medium out there, new exhibition form that doesn't fit necessarily directly in those categories, people have to juggle to figure out, okay, do we treat this as new media? Do we treat it as HBO, as pay TV? What about when movies are released day and date? With the new media release and theatrical release, how do you treat that? So there's a lot of complexity. And the trouble with complexity is that every above-the-line strike, virtually every one in the history of these unions from inception 80 years ago, have been about residuals. So the complexity of the residual system has a real impact, ultimately, on whether we see labor disturbances.
In the few minutes that we've got left, let's shift gears to a different union, which is IATSE. And they recently announced that they had a contract settlement. What's happening there?
So they negotiated their 3-year contract, and it has 3% increases. It has some increases in a pension, I believe. There were various working condition and new media-related terms. They really didn't release many of the details, so we're still looking at that. And I may be reporting something over the next week or so relating to that contract. Now, I will tell you, in terms of other developments, we have a study that just came out from the DGA on diversity in television directors. The headline there is, no more diversity today than there was last year. It's still basically a white man's job. 84% of the TV episodes in the last season were white male directors. So that's a very difficult place. And then just hot off the press, for those who work in music, SAG-AFTRA just announced a new sound recordings code. That is a new deal with record labels. And it has some media residuals and royalty provisions in it.
We've had a lot of conversation today and over the last year looking at the union situation in L.A., which is important for L.A. markets and New York. But is there relevance? Can this be extended to the broad media universe in which we live, or is this just really isolated to those two cities?
Well, no, these are nationwide unions. With the IATSE contract is a West Coast contract, 13 states, California obviously among them, but 12 other states. But the SAG-AFTRA contracts, both commercials and sound recording and TV theatrical upcoming, those are all nationwide contracts. So we are talking a nationwide impact here.
How about international? Is there any kind of spillover in terms of how these negotiations go versus what's happening overseas?
Well, certainly when you have productions that are under U.S. jurisdiction that are done overseas, for example, with SAG-AFTRA actors, you're talking SAG-AFTRA contracts that would apply, at least to the American actors. In terms of the contract negotiations that you would see in the U.K. or in Canada, there are sometimes some, there is sometimes some modeling. I mean, they are aware of what's going on in the U.S., but we're obviously talking separate unions and separate industries.
So what stories are you watching for the next 2 weeks? What's bubbling under the surface that's got your attention?
Well, gee, if I could tell you, my competitors might be watching this as well, so I have to be careful with what I say. But I am taking a closer look at the IATSE agreement. I think there may be something interesting there. I'm taking a look at what's going on with SAG-AFTRA, and further I sayeth not.
Jonathan, even if your competition takes notes on what you're doing, they won't write it as well as you do. Where can people go on the web to learn more about what your reporting is covering?
2 places, jhandel.com, my own blog, and THR Labor, the Hollywood Reporter Labor, thrlabor.com.
What do we find on your blog that we don't find on Hollywood Reporter?
Well, I don't blog a lot these days. So what you find more is background about me. You find links to my past appearances in the media, including Digital Production BuZZ, of course, and a way of contacting me. So if there are stories that people want to tip me on or things that I haven't gotten right, I welcome contact from people around the country and around the world.
Jonathan, it is always a delight chatting with you. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for bringing us up to date on the Guild situation in Los Angeles. Jonathan Handel of jhandel.com. We'll be right back.
Thank
you. Still to come on The Buzz, Avery Lu, Kesey Hupke, Tech Talk, and Buzz Flashback. If you need long-term archiving for your video content, then you should look at Zen Data. They specialize in providing secure, long-term storage of video content with a low cost per terabyte. The company has a variety of archive solutions that range from external LTO drives that can connect to your laptop to multi-petabyte storage systems using huge robotic libraries. Zen Data Systems will store your content on LTO or Sony optical disc archive cartridges. And with their next release, they also provide an option for archiving to the Amazon cloud. They offer great compatibility with many of the third-party applications used in the media and entertainment industry, including most media asset management systems. Zen Data has hundreds of installations around the world, from Los Angeles to Mongolia. So if protecting your assets is important to you, visit zendata.com. That's XENDATA.com.
Avery Lu is the co-founder and chief marketing officer at Palo Alto Scientific. This is a wearable tech company whose goal is to bring sports science to everyone. They do this by integrating sports science, data analytics, wearable technology, and the Internet of Things, including shoes. Hello, Avery. Welcome.
Hi, Larry. Good afternoon.
Avery, how would you describe Palo Alto Scientific?
So what our company's mission is to empower sports enthusiasts to participate in sports science, leveraging the whole wearables and the big data analytics. So what we do is our first product, Profile My Run, is actually designed to help runners improve their running form and technique using an app on our iOS device in a smart insole.
Now, this app actually connects with, if I remember from your website, an insole device, which has got a sensor built into it, which tells you everything you want to know about your feet. Is that true?
Correct. So basically, there's a force sensing sensor that's built into the insole, and that would replace your existing insole in your running shoe. That's actually one of our patent pending capabilities. And then we also using accelerometer as well as a Bluetooth LE to communicate with the iOS device to, in real time, advise runners to improve their posture, their cadence, their speed.
Now, what was it that woke you up in the middle of the night saying you have to co-found a company that does inserts to shoes?
So my founder and CEO, C.K. Lamb, actually several years ago, his doctor told him that he had to take up a sport to improve his health because he would otherwise have to take beta blockers for the rest of his life. And being an engineer and understanding data analytics long before we had this, terms big data and data analytics and data science, he said, I can solve this problem and I can help others as well.
Your company has the phrase, bringing sports science to everyone. What does that mean?
So what that means is we're really basing on the sports science and leveraging the whole technology capabilities to really improve people's lives. So just like right now you have the Fitbits that are kind of the first generation wearables giving you descriptive information about your weight, your calories, your steps. But we want to take it one step further. What if we can predict what's going to happen and also prescribe to you what you can do to improve your health, improve your fitness, to augment your life? And that's really, I think, the goal where a lot of the wearables going forward are going to be focused on in order to get that stickiness or rate of adoption that right now is sorely missing in the wearable space.
Avery, one of the things that I'm most interested in is I get a really excited feeling about this new technology, this data that you're able to get just by having an insert in our shoe. But at the same time, we're collecting all this medical information, and it seems like everything and its cousin is getting hacked these days. How do we keep all this data secure?
Yeah, so I think, I'm not a data security expert, but I would say that, the important thing is how we segment the data in terms of how much information I really have to have for the user, what can I do with it to provide some value. At the same time, not having to take enough data to really, like they say, piece it together so that people can really understand my personal life to the level that they say would like to know. And I think that's really the challenge right now.
Well, you're aggregating the data to keep it anonymous, but do we need to worry about things like HIPAA rules? Because I know HIPAA makes medical information even more secure than standard business data.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think right now, most startups like ourselves, what we want to do is we are trying to avoid the HIPAA and FDA in terms of just getting enough data to provide and prescribe, but without actually diagnosing an illness, because that's where HIPAA and the FDA would have to come in, right? I think, but we have been approached by many different companies that are already working on wearables in the medical space that would like to also participate in the consumer side. So I think there's an opportunity to work together to try to create these safeguards going forward for people's medical data.
What information is stored locally on the cell phone, and what information is aggregated in the cloud?
Well, right now for our current app, I think most of the data is actually being pushed up into the cloud. We just use, the data coming back from the cloud in order to advise using some audible tone so it doesn't interrupt a runner's session, if they're leaning too much forward or leaning too much backward. Now, as we improve our app and add additional functionalities to advise them, and also as we port to possibly a smartwatch as a standalone wearable that can last for ultra marathons, 100 miles, 300 miles, that's where a lot of the data will be stored locally on a flash memory. And then at the end of the session, or maybe at different spurts during the marathon, uploaded to the cloud.
Now, you mentioned this is anonymous. How can you analyze it if the data is anonymous? There's got to be some personalization for you to give feedback back to the runner. How are you making sure that the right data does not get lost?
Well, I think when we collect the data, of course, the user has to collect data. But I think it's really after we collect the data, right, how we safeguard it and then basically be able to give them and only them access to their data. And so that what happens after the session, they can actually go and look at the runner score and personal data on profilemyrun.com and only accessible through password.
With, let's see. Talk to me about the technology. How are you getting the signal, the data from the shoe to the phone? How does that work?
Oh, okay. So from the shoe, the insole would replace your existing running insole. And what you do is there's actually a cable that collects data from the foot, the force sense, up to 700 pounds per square inch. And from that data is aggregated with the accelerometer data in a module that clasps onto your shoelace. And then from that will be communicated through your iPhone and then your iOS app. And then basically it will advise you about your lean, if you're leaning forward enough or leaning too far back and so on.
And how does your company make its money?
Well, initially it would be from selling the hardware units, the insoles. But really what we want to do is we want to revolutionize the wearable industry in terms of not only selling hardware. Hardware is just a platform to collect data. I think the future of wearables is really going to be about the data analytics, the prescriptive and predictive nature, what we can provide. And we want to create kind of like Steve Jobs took the creative MP3 and made it into, iTunes, right? And having artists sell their data or their music or their art on an ecosystem tied to iOS. What we want to do is we want to create a sports marketplace leveraging social media so runners can share their data amongst themselves. And we can even get celebrity runners to sell their profiles, just like artists sell their music on iTunes. And therefore, if you wanted to run like Med Kennedy, who won the Boston Marathon, then he can actually sell you the profile. And using machine learned apps and understanding your physiology, we can actually map your run to learn his form and technique to win marathons.
Well, is this a business model similar to Google's, where the money is in the advertising and you're marketing our data back to other people or to ourselves?
Yeah, so in some respects, it's like that. But I think what we want to do is, people will opt in because they see value in, how it's going to augment their lives, right? So if they see that the data we're returning back to them is something worth spending, then they're willing to pay the monthly subscriptions, $5.99, $7.99, $9.99, if it improves your life. I mean, right now you have Map My Run, and you also have the Fitbits, and they will charge subscriptions. But what happens is that data still is not as useful as where it should be. And we're striving as a company, just like the industry, to provide valuable data so that you're willing to spend the money because you're getting your big bang out of your dollar. I think, with us paying cell phone bills and DirecTV and other bills, why should I justify paying yet another expense, right?
Where can people go on the web to learn more about the products your company makes and your company itself?
They can go to profilemyrun.com, or they can also check us out on Facebook. So you just do facebook.com/profilemyrun. And what we do is we actually blog and post different aspects about running science and sports science.
Still to come on The Buzz, Casey Hupke, Tech Talk, and Buzz Flashback.
Hi, I've got a ton of brand new training videos showcasing all the new features in Final Cut Pro 10.2, and it's available today. In fact, we've updated our entire Final Cut training just for this release. We added more than 70 new movies covering every major new feature in the software. Then I added new techniques and new ways of working that I've discovered and written about in my newsletter over the years. I updated our workflow and editing training with 31 new movies and effects with 41 new movies. This makes our Final Cut Pro 10 training the most comprehensive, most up-to-date, and most affordable way to learn everything about this amazing software. It's quick, it's easy, and it's complete. I'm proud of all of my training, and especially this one. Get your copy today in our store at larryjordan.com, or even better, become a member of our video training library and get access to all our training for one low monthly price. Both are incredible values. Thanks.
This is Tech Talk from the Digital Production Buzz.
We also have improved editing, trimming, and trimming display. I'm going to take the morph cuts out and trim here. As we trim, we have the ability to see the shift in timecode by looking inside the program monitor. And if you look really, really closely, you can see the timecode display. As you have a larger screen, the timecode display becomes more visible. I'm running this at a 1280 by 720 setup. We can also use Command right arrow to move a clip, Command left arrow to move a clip. If I select an edit point, we can move an edit point with Option left and Option right arrow. If we go up to Premiere Pro CC, go down to Keyboard Shortcuts and search for Nudge, this is where we're able to set what happens when we want to move a clip. Notice it's Command left arrow and Command right arrow. If we select Trim, this is where we're able to trim. Notice how it's Option left arrow, Option right arrow. You can use the same keyboard shortcut, whichever one you prefer, for both trimming with the keyboard or nudging with the keyboard. This is a subtle but significant change because it decreases the number of keyboard shortcuts you have to remember. This next one is really cool. Let's go back. This is one of those things where you look at this and say, why are everybody excited? But it's really nice. Let's go back to our Grand Teton shot here. Go up to Effects Controls. Click this icon to enable the on-screen motion control settings. And if you've got the eyes of an eagle, you'll be able to see right here in the center of the frame, that's the indicator for the anchor point. We can now grab the anchor point and drag it wherever we want it to go. Now, I can hear you asking already, why does anybody want to move the anchor point? The anchor point is that portion of the frame around which it rotates and around which it zooms. So rather than have to do a two-step setup where you've got to set a position command and you do a zoom and you do a scale command, now you just simply move the anchor point to the point around which you want something to grow or shrink or rotate. You can move the anchor point and then you just have a single command, change the scale. Much easier. The problem was in the past, the way this worked was, let me reset here. The problem is, in the past, we would need to remember that Premiere considered the 0, point to be the top left corner. And that meant that if I wanted to rotate around this corner, we've got to do a ton of math to figure out exactly how many pixels over and how many pixels down that particular point is. And then we had to dial the numbers in. It was just painful. Now, thank goodness, we can grab the anchor point and drag it. It's a small thing, but I've been cheering ever since I discovered that was a feature.
This Tech Talk was shared from Larry Jordan's website at larryjordan.com.
Casey Hupke is a visual effects designer and an animator who's been working commercially for more than 7 years. As a freelancer, he collaborates with studios to help define an artistic style for clients such as IBM, AT&T, Coca-Cola, and Buick. His passion for comedy and a special love of illogical special effects helps to define his workflow and his aesthetic. Hello, Casey. Welcome.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Casey, how would you describe what you do?
I guess the most poignant way to describe it was a motion designer hacker. I a lot of the times, like beyond just on the design level, I have to come up with solutions for how to get things done at a fast pace.
Do you think of yourself as a solutions provider or as a designer of effects?
A little bit of both, but probably more of a solutions designer.
How come?
Well, there's a lot of times where I end up being more of like a technical director or a lead on a project, so I don't end up actually getting to go from 0 to 100% with like a frame or a shot. I more or less come up with like a idea or a trick, and then from there distribute that out to a team or some other partners, and then they'll usually finish it up.
Who are some of the clients that you've had in the past?
I've worked with a lot of the big studios out in Los Angeles, and most recently I've been doing concert visuals for, like, I just worked on the U2 tour that's going on right now, and I've worked with Katy Perry and Lady Gaga, Tim and Faith, and Nicki Minaj.
We're gonna talk more about the U2 tour in just a minute, but we went to your website and downloaded your demo reel, and when I showed it to the team here in the office, everybody's jaw was on the floor. So it runs about a minute, and it's worthwhile, I think, to share it with the audience. So let's take a look at your demo reel.
Please don't hold me back. No. Please don't hold me back.
I haven't seen that many particles in a long time.
Thanks. Yeah, that was sort of, I think my biggest claim to fame has been definitely working with particles in like data viz or like kind of like future user interface type design. It was something that there wasn't a lot of Cinema 4D users using. There was a big hole in that community for a particle guy. And I basically saw that as an opening for me to see, like, to fill that hole and be like, well, I'm going to find a lot more because this is a door that's wide open to anyone that can just figure it out. And it can't be that complicated. So after a lot of time with research and development and reading the Cinema 4D manual and everything, just eventually I got to a point where that's now kind of what I've been typecast as, which I'm totally fine with.
Well, if you get results like that, that's a great thing to be typecast as. Some of those effects are just amazing. Congratulations.
Thanks.
What? Let's say that I want to deal high level first, and I want to talk about some of the more specific projects you've worked on. But a company comes to you. How do you decide how to solve their problem? Do you see the solution in your head and you go right to it, or is it a process of exploration, or what's your creative process? How do you work through getting some of the effects we just looked at?
I try to look at the micro level of what's going on in the design reference or the frame or whatever, or even like the verbal ask. And I try to think what at the core of this, what's the movement? Like, is there something in the real world that I can relate this to? And usually it's some kind of like dust particle in the wind or like fluid coming out of a faucet or something, and kind of start additively creating those types of effects and then mixing them and mashing them up. And a lot of it just comes down to trying to figure out what all the little things are that are making this motion or this reference feel right. And it's usually things that you're not even aware of, that just like a little bit of depth and field wiggle or like a little bit of motion blur error or just little things that like break up the linearness of animations. Those are the things that I kind of look for in a design, like the things that are going to make your brain, sort of feel confused, but like it's looking at something real because it can't quite understand it.
Now, I don't want to bring up past history here, but you're using terms like depth of field and creative terms, but you didn't start out as a designer. How did you get into this field?
I started, I was working at a hair salon that my wife worked at, answering phones, and I went on Craigslist, and this was like in 2004, and I was literally looking for a cool job. And I found this posting for it was a motion graphics studio called Exopolis, and they were looking for a production coordinator. So I sent them a completely informal email, just kind of word vomiting about what I do and what I like to do. And in that list was this hacking zine that I published with some friends. And I built a lot of computers and loved technology. So instead of hiring me as a production coordinator, they hired me as a part-time IT guy. And after about 6 months of that, they brought me on full-time. And then they saw me kind of like using Cinema 4D and After Effects and Photoshop. And they were like, what are you doing? And I was like, well, I've been trying to learn these apps so I can figure out why they're crashing when people are trying to get renders done. And, so I've just been learning it on the side. And they were like, oh, cool. And they kind of kept watching. And eventually I started answering people's questions about core level technologies in cinema and After Effects. And then they were like, okay, now you're going to start doing some of this work. So they gave me a job as a junior animator designer and kept me as the IT guy. A little bit of time later, they said, we're hiring a new IT guy. I initially thought I was being fired. And they basically said, we want you to be a regular staff animator on the team. I was like, wow, okay, this is amazing. And then over the course of the next, several years, like I went from 19, a little kid in the company, to a 23-year-old, 24-year-old, and I was a lead animator. And the last project I worked on there was this really big thing for Microsoft Xbox 360. It was like a revision of their user interface, and it was like the Anthem video.
Yeah.
But yeah, my college was basically answering a Craigslist ad and then getting thrown into this world of motion design. And I had no idea this was going to be where I was going to be today.
Well, you got to admit, going from a hair studio to working on a U2 tour is a heck of a change in life.
Yeah, yeah. Especially, I mean, I didn't go to art school. I went to junior college like a little bit. Even high school, I got out of when I was like 16 through the California high school proficiency exam. I've always been sort of like a self-motivated educator, and it's always been kind of sort of easy for me to kind of pick something up or learn something. So I've really enjoyed doing that. And lately, I've been not traveling, but doing like NAB and SIGGRAPH with Maxon and kind of trying to pass on that the stuff that I've learned along the way.
That is very cool. Well, let's talk more specifically about this recent gig you did for U2, but you've done a lot of music, Lady Gaga and Katy Perry. What is it about music videos that caught your interest, and what are you doing for them?
The music world, the live concerts, it was another thing that sort of, a company hit me up, this company called Possible Productions, a few years ago, and we decided to like do like a kind of like a contractual like dating. I came in as a creative director at the company, and they wanted to make concert visuals, and I was like, this looks awesome. Like, I'd love to sit in front of a huge arena and make content, figure out how we're going to make this song and this theme feel appropriate in this, sometimes it's 97 HD screens that are wrapped around a sphere. Sometimes it's an inflatable that's impossible to projection map. But the main thing was it's that you're not making something that's just going to be seen on TV or in a movie theater, or you're adding in like the vanilla or the sprinkles to someone's dessert. Like they're experiencing this entire thing, and you're just a small part of it. But it's really important to the overall piece. So I just loved the fact that we were collaborating with all these different departments. The sound engineers, the grips, the bands themselves, the wardrobe. It's just creating this big show. It just felt like I was working in a creative world that I'd never experienced in like commercial motion graphics or visual effects for movies.
Well, who do you report to? Who gives you the assignment, and who signs off on the creative? How does that process work?
It really depends on who I'm working with. I've worked with a few different companies that do these large tours. Like most recently, I was working with Empirical Studio, who's another company with Third Company in London, and they do like AC/DC and Ed Sheeran and U2, obviously. And so I'll usually just be like an implant in their team, travel to whatever venue we're at. Like for U2 specifically, we rehearsed in Pennsylvania for a month, and then I took a week off and went to Vancouver for like 2 months to get ready, like on set for the first of the shows on the tour. And so to answer the question, whoever's employing me is going to be sort of the boss, but most often it's a band manager or band art director.
I was just wondering, it's not the band itself, but it's like their producer or manager that's the one that's doing the hiring and making the creative decisions?
No, well, the band definitely is going to have their say and their word, and it's usually the final word. But sometimes, like with some bands, I've just, the only thing I've gotten from them is, yeah, that's cool. And the manager will be like, okay, yeah, I know they said this is cool, but like, so check this out. We have this idea where we want it to go up and down and then zig, zig, zig. And then they want to see that in 5-6 hours. So we got, small teams, usually 3 to 6 people that have to turn out, an hour of content. And so everyone kind of jams on a song. We, make style frames out of clipped images sometimes. Sometimes we're just doing Pinterest boards or doing like Cinema 4D explorations and R&D and being like, how does this look? I don't know, let's try it, compose it. So we'll do like a quick edit over or something and throw it up on the huge arena screen and just, watch a band practice privately for us.
How are you playing it back? Once it's been rendered and finished, how does it play back?
That's, again, situational to the concert. There's usually operators that handle the projections that are run through like a D3 service or like a touch designer. It's like software that's basically a whole bunch of PCs that are piped into whatever screens or run into the projectors. There's usually some form of projection mapping that we see in real time after we render out of After Effects or Cinema. And yeah, we usually are sitting with maybe 30 other people in an arena and just alone, 2 o'clock in the morning, looking at the stuff that we just made. It's a super surreal experience.
Casey, where can people go on the web to learn more about you and your work?
You can find me on Twitter at Darth Casey, or you can find me on my website, xcaseyx.com. It's under a bit of a transition right now, but it'll be back soon.
All one word, xcaseyx.com. You see it on the screen. Casey Hupke is the visual effects designer. Casey, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
It's time for a BuZZ flashback. 5 years ago today.
When we started out the library, there was a dearth of music that was actually active, that drew attention. A lot of music, production music, was backgroundy and kind of meant, if you were scoring World of the Squirrel, it would be fine for music. But if you were actually scoring a promo or a trailer or anything where you wanted to cut to video, you couldn't find anything. So we created a library that actually did that.
This was a BuZZ flashback.
I was struck by the amount of diversity in today's show. We were talking with Jonathan Handel about the guild situation and contract negotiations, and then we started to switch to we switched to feet and how we can keep track of our running and improve as runners by getting feedback from our feet in terms of the exercising we're doing. And suddenly we're doing tours for YouTube and Lady Gaga with art design. And I had not considered until I was talking with Casey about how we get these to play back, because they're filling huge walls with multiple projectors. And it was interesting that they could have as many as 30 PCs playing this stuff back all at one time. It was just, I love the diversity, and I love the range of subjects that media now covers today, from the very business-like contract negotiations to some what used to be outlandish and now considered typical examples of media. I want to thank our guest today, Jonathan Handel of Counsel at Troy Gould and the entertainment labor reporter for The Hollywood Reporter, Avery Lu of Palo Alto Scientific, Casey Hupke, freelance visual effects artist. There's a lot of history in our industry, and it's all posted to our website at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Here you'll find hundreds of past shows and thousands of interviews, all online and all instantly available. Plus, our website's getting a facelift. Check out our new look at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Visit with us on Twitter at DPBuzz and Facebook at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Our theme music is composed by Nathan Doogie Turner, with additional music provided by Smart Sound. Text transcripts provided by Take One Transcription. Visit takeone.tv to learn how they can help you. Our producer, Serena Catania, our engineering team, Brianna Murphy, Ed Golia, Keegan Guy, Lindsay Lubert, James Miller, and Jen Smith. Thanks for watching The Buzz.
The Digital Production Buzz was brought to you by Otherworld Computing, providing quality hardware solutions and extensive technical support to the worldwide computer industry since 1988. And by Zen Data, who provides highly competitive digital video archive solutions.